Kelly, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. I'm good. Kelly, just for the purposes of our audience, do you want to just say who you are and what you do within St. Giles?
So my name is Kelly Broadbent, and I am currently Service Delivery Manager for North Yorkshire within St. Giles. We have got two services in North Yorkshire at the moment, so we're relatively new to the area, but we have services that are funded by the Ministry of Justice, working with males and females on probation, and that is surrounding their personal well-being and other kind of criminogenic needs that they might have whilst they're on probation. So that's interesting. My background is I worked in a male prison prior to this role with St. Giles, but predominantly my specialism has been domestic abuse. I have been a domestic abuse victim in my past many years ago, and that led me, part of my healing process was to study it really from a victim perspective, from a perpetrator perspective, from a child perspective that would be involved in it. And I achieved a first class honours bachelor's degree from that. And then found myself working with victims of abuse really. And again, part of my healing process, and I think it's quite common for people to move on and turn that negative experience into a positive. I think it's really useful and valuable. So that's what I did. I worked for the police as domestic abuse officer for years, and then took a jump to the other side and went to work in a prison.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Here I am.
Here you are. Right. Fantastic. You sound already like an inspirational woman. That's what you sound
right.
like. And well, you know what? I think people listening to you, and as we go through this, they'll probably pick up the same thing that I've just picked up in what you've said about you. As you know, this podcast is part of the 60th anniversary for St. Giles, and every month we're talking to somebody who has made an impact and is making an impact in St. Giles, in their work, in their life as well outside. And this is why we're having a conversation today. And I suppose I want to lead off, actually, Kelly, by asking you a question. How can we all look to empower women in our daily lives?
I think listening and respecting. My experiences have been quite positive. Working in a predominantly female sector, and I know it's going to be a completely different perspective in other areas and other industries. But I think for me, the one thing that we could all challenge, and we should all challenge, is the toxic masculinity that we're presented with often in our personal lives and in the workplace. If there's a conversation that's going on in a group of men, say, or whether it's in a conversation that's open to all, there is an element of that, I think, where women can be spoken about in a derogatory manner, even in, if for example, a male might speak about his wife in a certain way, like a traditionally speaking her in the kitchen or something like that. And I think whilst we are moving out of that, I would hope it's just challenging the few that still do speak like that, because that's where it kind of spreads. And it's the same as any kind of abuse, isn't it? It's if nobody says anything and nobody challenges it, nobody really learns any better. So that for me is kind of the biggest thing that we need to be all aware of.
I think you made some good points there, and I'll probably come back to some of those a bit later on, because there has to be a change, doesn't there? There has to be, and I think there's been, certainly in the media in recent months, and with the is it Everard case that happened a while back now. There was an emphasis on women having to make changes. And actually, it's not just women who need to make changes, it's men that need to make change.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And and I believe it will happen. I believe it's happening. I believe it's happening. It's slow, but I think it's happening. but there does need to be a change, and it shouldn't be. Should it be that just women say, right? It's the responsibility falls to women to say, okay, this is what's happening, and this is it, and yes, that's right. But also, men need to also say, you know what, this isn't right. Whether it is, let's say, in an office environment, banter, or whether it is a casual conversation that's taking place. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think it's down to men and women to become feminist, and that doesn't mean burning bras and running around the streets. It's just about being aware of equality, and feminism.
Yes, absolutely.
Can be quite a scary word to some, but it's not. It should be the wavelength that we're all on and all fighting for the same cause, really. And I'm really fortunate that I've got amazing men in my life and family and social circles that do support all of that. So, but I'm fully aware that it won't be the case for everyone.
Kelly, the younger you, what advice would you give the younger version of yourself about what it's like to be a woman in the 21st century?
I love this question. See, I was brought up, as I'm sure many others were that of my age and older, to be pretty and to be polite and to people please, and not have an opinion, not step out of that mold and behave in a certain way, be ladylike and all of that. And I think if I could sit down with younger me and give her some advice, it would be just be you. Just if you've got an opinion, say it and don't worry about that it might clash with another person's opinion, because that's completely fine. And just be who you want to be successful, sod the pretty, be successful, be kind, be compassionate, be caring, fight for what you want, and don't worry about staying in line with other people or taking over someone else because you might upset them. Just be yourself and do what you want to do.
Wow, I think that's fantastic. But actually, on another level, for males listening, you know what, they'll be inspired by that as well. Yeah, it is about drive. It is about actually not falling to the stereotypes that have been laid down for years and years and years. So no, great.
I think it was all, the men will be successful and women just had to kind of fit the mold and look pretty and just do as they were told, if you like.
That's right, that's right, yeah.
There was no motivation to succeed or excel in anything. And that's changed now. I think for my children especially, that's completely different. And for their peers as well, I think it's different. So we're definitely changing, all for the best.
Yes. I mean, with you don't need to mention children's names or anything, but with your children, can you see elements of you in your children?
Yes, naturally. I think, I can. And I try and encourage the opposite. If I see that, I'll say, well, why do you think that is? What would happen if you tried to do it this way? And try to kind of get them to balance and make informed choices about how they. I never had any of that, and I don't think it was spoken about. Communication was lacking, I think, generationally before. But I promote all of that, and we kind of look at choices and how we behave might bring different outcomes, or how we see things might bring different outcomes. So I think naturally it does pass down generationally. But it's just being aware, I think, of how I let that come through me and and just to let them know that there are different ways of doing things and different perspectives.
I mean, how do you think women's lives compared to how they were 60 years ago have moved on?
We've definitely moved on. When you ask a question like this, I revert back to domestic abuse world because that's just ingrained within me. The marital rape issue, which only changed in 1991 when there was the first conviction of attempted rape within a marital setting. And prior to that, it was 91, Peter. Wow. So prior to that, it was believed that a man couldn't be guilty of raping his wife. It just wasn't a thing. So, and 91 isn't that long ago.
No.
And that was just a one-off case then, so it was still would have been unheard of. I think it was 2003 when it became explicitly a law.
I'm thinking about somebody who's listening now, who's in a situation, who's in a difficult situation, who's on a domestic violence, domestic abuse scenario, and they're thinking, can I get out of this? Do you have any words of encouragement to say to somebody who might be listening now?
Well, you started something now, Peter. I've got lots of words.
That's all right. That's okay.
I think it's really important to say that people often don't understand or recognise that it's an abusive relationship. So it could be someone that's listening that thinks that an abusive relationship has to be violent and we have to be the cowering victim that's in a corner with a black eye like we see on the adverts. That's not the case often. It could be just emotional abuse. It could be psychological. It could be financial. There's lots of different aspects, sexual, like we've just been speaking about. It doesn't have to be violent. If that element of control is there and choices are taken away, then potentially that's abusive. And it can just be as harmful, if not more harmful than physical. The physical assaults heal and go away, whereas other aspects, which is emotional and psychological, don't. So I would say if you have any issues around that and you're questioning things, then the chances are there's an issue, and it does escalate, does get worse. There are, in each area, in each county, there will be a service, a domestic abuse service, a charity. Reach out to them first and foremost. It's a confidential service, and they are not going to say to you, right, leave today, that's it. They can help you, they can talk to you whilst you're in that relationship. They can look at safety aspects. So if something did happen, how would you leave if you chose to? I think a lot of people are scared to communicate because they'll be told by someone else. That's just another element of control. So any domestic abuse charity wouldn't do that. It's about communicating and having that safe space to speak about someone, and they'll manage how they ring, they'll manage how they communicate, they'll consider all of those risks to keep people safe. And not forgetting it's not just women, this can be men as well. So and it's the same thing, the agencies are still there to support people. And if people did want to leave quite urgently, if it was physical violence, then there are refuges available for people to go to. When I was in my situation, I didn't know that. It's just important to say there are things out there, and it will be on an individual's terms, if you like. It's not a scary thing, it's just a helpful thing.
Right. And Kate, can I ask you, without you going into great detail, obviously, for your situation, but because you got out, somebody listening now, they might want to know, well, okay, it's great what you said, but how did you get out? What did you do to get out?
Gosh, I stayed for 7 years, and the police call-outs became more and more frequent. But in my head, it was my unique relationship, and I made justifications for him and accepted it and thought it'll end, because when the sorries come out, the sorries are very real and it's very charming, and you want things, you want your family unit to remain. Everybody does. And it's a scary, scary thing to think to end it. Not to mention that risks increase once you end it, because then they've lost control. So really difficult. And in the last instance, there was an assault that happened in front of all of my friends publicly. It had never happened publicly before, so I couldn't get out of that. It was quite drastic. And so the police got involved and I had their full support. I couldn't not do anything about it because everybody knew, whereas before I would have probably thought, oh, I won't continue with the police. He said sorry, now it's not going to happen again, which happens an awful lot, and that's natural and that's fine. No one should feel ashamed of that. It's fine. Everybody's got their own journey and their own pace. So I had the police support. The police were amazing. The police process doesn't work for everyone. I know that'll be really scary to some people, but it worked for me with legal orders and things like that. That wasn't the end of it, because it did continue for quite a few years afterwards, and I ended up moving away. So I moved out of area. I am so grateful for the situation that I'm in now, and it's all fine now. I'm very, very lucky. It's not as easy for everyone. Everyone's situation is completely different. The risks are different for everybody. So there's no comparison with cases, everybody just needs to with their own situations.
I mean, it's amazing what you said, Kelly. And what I've picked up out of that is that there is another way. There's an alternative. You can get out. You're not on your own. I think sometimes, from my understanding, that sometimes, and if I say women, we do know that men can be victims, that women sometimes may feel that it's only them that are going through this.
Yeah.
And they don't want to say anything to anybody out of fear, out of embarrassment. They don't want to disrupt anything, how they're going to survive in the future because of those constraints, because there may be financial control, there may be things that are going on.
Yeah.
But what I'm picking up from you loud and clear is that actually, despite all that, you can still get out. You need to get out of that situation for your sake, and if there's children involved, for their sake as well.
I think a lot of women and men, where there are children involved, think, and I did, they're upstairs, they're asleep, they can't hear anything, it's fine.
Yes.
And you feel a massive responsibility to protect the little people in their lives, and you do. But if it's happening, you can't.
Yeah.
They're in that house, they're affected. They pick up on tensions, they pick up on situations. And mine are completely fine. Thankfully, they were young enough. But it is really important to remember that as much as anybody does in that situation to try and protect them, it's not a healthy place for children. And I think a lot of people, from my working experience, a lot of women will kind of almost accept the abuse themselves. And it's okay, it's just me kind of perspective. But when you think about their children and say, look, it is affecting your children, the strength that they find instantly is like, I'm not having my children affected. And that just strikes a whole new level. And that can change things. So I think it's really important that I do make that point of, children are a massive factor, and they don't want to be in that environment, and they certainly it's not healthy.
No. Listen, I'm honoured to listen to you talk and speak, and I know people on the podcast won't see you, but I can see you. I can see when you were just talking, you won't know it, but I can see that there's this drive and you're not a victim. And to me, that's important for people to hear that.
Yeah.
That message, actually, do you know what? Actually, I'm not a victim. You can make a change. You can make a difference. In your intro, you said achieved so far.
Yeah.
If you didn't mention anything about your past life, as it were, then people wouldn't know. They wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
I hope people who are listening to this, will hear that you're not a victim. You're not saying, well, poor me.
Do you know what, Peter? I wouldn't change a thing, and I know that probably sounds insane, but it's made me who I am today. And every part of every experience that we've all been through has brought us to where we are. And it's mindset. It's about turning negatives into positives, which is what St. Giles is all about.
Yes.
And I think there's no shame from me to speak about my past, because it was no fault of my own. And I think, like I said earlier, that any kind of abuse thrives in silence. But there's a massive stigma with domestic abuse, an awful lot of shame and embarrassment around it. And I think the more that people don't speak about things, the more it kind of remains the white elephant in the room. It happens an awful lot to 1 in 4 women. So for all of those women and men that might be keeping quiet and thinking that they're potentially the only person going through it, there's so many. And if people spoke up more, obviously, if it's safe. So when people spoke up about their past experiences, I really think it gives people the confidence to know that they can get through that, and just to reach out to people. There's no shame.
There's no shame. Do you know what? That should be your strap line. There's no shame. There's no shame. And it's true, there isn't. And there's another way. There's always another way.
Definitely.
I think that's great. Let's look at it. 60 years in the future. How do you think society, the workplace, an organisation like St. Giles will be for women in 60 years' time?
I'd like to think that we'll just keep pushing forwards, and we'll be in a good place with equality and diversity in all aspects, not just gender, that we'll move forwards and we'll grow. St. Giles are really up to date with things like that, and I think we're all really good at promoting that and challenging it where it's appropriate, and fighting for each other's causes. It's what the organisation is about.
Yeah.
So I think for us, we will be in a really good place as an organisation. Society, I hope, will be moving in that direction as well. But I think there's always the pull back to a certain extent from a group of people. I'm not saying a specific group, but any group. And there'll always be those kind of views, I think, that carry through generationally.
Yes.
I think we'll be in a better place, but maybe not perfect.
Okay, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
I think I could be right.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair because we don't know, but we got to be optimistic, haven't we? And there will be challenges, of course. But like you, I like to feel that there'll be progression, not just in St. Giles, but elsewhere as well.
Yeah.
Places, different work environments, and that's not me being Mr. Uber optimistic. It's just I just believe that yes, there can be change and there will be change. I've got another question for you. What would you say are the biggest challenges that women supported by St. Giles face?
In North Yorkshire, with the service that we've got there for women, it would be mental health issues and the lack of support for people struggling with mental health across the board. Huge factor, because I think the women that come through our system, and when I say that, that means through probation referrals, so anybody that's on a community order or that's come through the prison process, have got mental health issues. I think probably 99%. And women often find themselves in the justice system because of traumatic experiences, because of negative experiences, and they've found themselves there through no fault of their own sometimes. And it could be said for men as well. So I think financial difficulties as well, a huge issue, because that then potentially brings to the surface any survival sex working, which we're finding more and more often in North Yorkshire. So they're struggling with income. The benefits, universal credit and things like that don't pay very much. And a lot of the time they're not able to work because they're too chaotic and their mental health issues are quite severe, and their lifestyle, they wouldn't be able to function to work. So they need an awful lot of support before they get into the place where they'd be appropriate for working. So what do they do in the meantime through that stepping stone? A lot of the time they've not got any accommodation because there isn't enough accommodation to go around. If they leave prison and they've not got anywhere to return to, a place to stay, then they'll go into a hostel, and they may have worked really hard through prison to get clean from whatever substance they might have been involved in, and then they come out of the prison straight into a hostel that has got lots of drugs going on in it, and probably a lot of people that they know from their past life, and then back they go around again. They start to use within the first day or so, and then they're really hard for us to engage with because they're back into that cycle. So it is really difficult. I think those three issues, accommodation, mental health, and financial difficulties, just prevent them from getting out of that cycle a lot of the time. And we're there to kind of intervene and meet them as soon as they leave prison to try and push them on the right path. Encourage them to make those positive choices. But it's difficult. It's a real challenge. I think our support as a service is extremely valuable, because a lot of the ladies that we work with don't have any support. They don't have anyone, and quite often they may not have ever had anyone supportive. I would say the majority of them have been in an abusive situation, whether that be within an intimate relationship, or through sex working, or through childhood. There's so much trauma there, so much trauma, and not everyone's equipped to be able to deal with that on their own. They can then go out to self-medicate and find themselves addicted to substances, and on it goes. But yeah, I think our service is doing really, really well in North Yorkshire at the moment.
And it sounds it. And I mean, have you got North Yorkshire? Have you got a waiting list, as it were?
No, we've not. So we only take our referrals from probation at the moment. So it just their referrals come through to us. We have an office in York, an office in Scarborough, and an office in Harrogate and Craven. So we cover all areas of North Yorkshire. We do go up to Northallerton as well, as and when we needed. We do group work, we do one-to-one, we do drop-in sessions, and we make it very social. Probation are quite an authoritative role, and that's fine, that's how they work. But they pass over to us, and we work from a social supportive aspect. So they'll come in, they'll have a tea, coffee, some cake. How can we support you? And I think it's to believe in someone. It makes an awful lot of difference for us to listen to them and understand who they are, what they've come from, why are you in that situation, what's brought you to this. And that in itself puts a whole new perspective on it. So many people look at someone and write them off within the first 10 minutes just based on the issues that they've got going on, but there's always a background, there's always a backstory.
And it sounds like, Kelly, that what I'm picking up from what you're saying, that there's no judgment. You're not judging them.
Oh gosh, no, so important. If,
Yeah.
if we have a new starter, that's rule number one. And we all have those subconscious bias in our minds. And I think we
Yes.
need to be really mindful and aware of that. But my team especially are so empathic and compassionate. And the same with St. Giles on the whole. I think we're all out for the same reasons. And it's about being
Yes.
passionate about that. And a lot of,
Yes.
as you'll know, a lot of our staff are from lived experience, which is
Yes.
really valuable in itself.
Yes. Yes.
So it just works, yeah. No judgment, not at all.
Mm.
Otherwise, we'd fail at the first hurdle.
No, absolutely. And just touching on a bit about the lived experience, Kelly, for our listeners, can you tell us a bit about that? So you've got somebody who's got lived experience. What difference do you think that makes to somebody, to the clients that you work with and support?
So much difference. So much difference. So what we do alongside our services in North Yorkshire and other regions as well, this is how St. Giles kind of pride themselves. We have the peer advisor network.
Yes.
So we offer a level 2 qualification and a level 3 qualification around learning to advise and information advice and guidance. If we get somebody that comes through our services, or we can take referrals from different agencies that deal with lived experience candidates as well, that are ready to take that next step. They come through, they'll do the qualifications, and they'll learn how to kind of speak, support, mentor other people. So for example, if a female came through our female service towards the end, she was ready, like, right, yeah, I'm ready to take the next step. I've learned so much from this service. I've got myself to this destination. What's next? So they're not quite ready to get into full-time paid employment, but they're ready to take the next step. So they'll go into the qualification, and alongside that, they'll need some working experience to put case studies together and things like that. So they'd work with our women's wellbeing coaches and on their caseload. So they'd do things like sitting and filling forms out, supporting somebody, maybe going to an appointment with them, the lower end. In a group setting, where we might have a session on, I don't know, dependency and recovery. So we'd have a group session with lots of, we call them POPs, which is people on probation, in that group session. And it's kind of an informative, educational thing, and people will share stories if they want to. When we as professionals talk to them in that group, you can almost see a little bit of dim behind the eyes, thinking, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just doing this from textbook. Yes. And really, you don't understand. And that's fine, because truth be known, I don't. Personally, I don't. And I'll admit that, and I always say that I do not understand fully. All I can do is try. However, if you've got somebody sat next to you that's peer advisor, and they're ready to talk in that setting, they can go, similar to what I've just done about the domestic abuse, actually, this is where I was. This is how I found myself doing that. And these are the choices that I made. And this is what I did about it. And look at me now. All of a sudden, the demeanor, the way that they interact, the light comes in their eyes, they're perked up, they're ready to listen. Because there's belief, oh my God, it can happen. And look at her, she's sat in that seat telling us how to do this. I want to be that person. And then you've got some more through peer advisor.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yes. It makes such a difference. And for that person as well, that has the lived experience, to sit in that seat and know that their experience themselves, that negative experience, is then driving other people to make their own changes. Amazing. So everyone in that room is benefiting from what's going on.
Fantastic. I mean, I don't know what your ratio of male to female staff are, but what could male colleagues do to help women they support?
I think we don't have any males on our service. That's not because we can't. It's just that we've got a very small team. We've got 3 coaches that cover the whole of North Yorkshire. But I do think it would be useful to have a male on the service. That would be really valuable, because a lot of the women on this service I'm talking about often haven't had a positive male role model in their lives. So if we could bring in a male to work within the service, and it would be on the terms of the ladies that we work with. Some will work with a male, and some might find that triggering, and that would be fine. But I think for women to be around positive male energy is really valuable, because it gives them an outlook. Sometimes they can all men the same if they've had experiences.
Yes.
So I think that would be good. just quite calming. As much as we say that there's equality between genders, men and women both have their own values, if you like.
Yeah, no, of course I do. Yeah.
We've got our qualities individually, and I think some of that would be good. Men can be quite logical and pragmatic, and obviously us women can be emotional and compassionate. So meet in the middle, and I think that's the perfect kind of service to help everyone, really.
Okay. It sounds like a light bulb was switched on in you. I can see you thinking now, hold on, we need to get a mail in.
Yes, did you know?
So I don't know who your manager is, but don't blame me. That's what Peter said.
No, we need a mail.
I don't mind at all. No, I think that's I think what you said is right, because actually it might be just as empowering for some women as well, that because particularly from the life that they've lived, because it's that saying, is it not everybody is the same, you can't paint everybody with the same brush. Yeah, I've got a question for you. This is going back on that inspirational bit, because I really feel inspired listening to you. And so this is for women that are listening now. What techniques can women utilize to make sure their voices are heard in the workplace?
I think to believe in themselves and be confident in what they're saying. And back to what I'd said earlier about child me and not feeling confident in speaking up, I think it can be quite overwhelming to speak about opinions and ideas and values in the fear of upsetting someone, or in the fear of people not agreeing.
Yes.
And in a workplace where there are males, for example, I can imagine it would be difficult, because if you've been brought up to think that men are the powerful, successful people in this world, it can be quite intimidating. So I think my advice would be to believe in your voice, believe in your values, and speak up confidently. And like I was saying about females being a quality of females being compassionate and a quality of men being logical and pragmatic, I think what I would try and do to voice an idea or an opinion in the workplace is be a balance of the two, so that it's heard from all perspectives, kind of thing. We can translate it and it's understood by everyone.
That's brilliant. So we're coming towards the end, and people have hung on to every word you've said. Men and women being inspired by you. So can you just give some words of encouragement? And I'm going to leave this vague as possible, so that it gives you freedom how you answer this. But can you just give some words of encouragement to women? I'm going to keep this to women in St. Giles, outside of St. Giles.
Do not be afraid. Be kind. Be proud. Be powerful. Look after each other as women, because we need to in all aspects of life, and stand together in all aspects of life. And just back to the relationships and keeping each other safe, just be mindful how frequent domestic abuse happens. So be mindful, because not everyone speaks up about that, and you never really know who wants to talk about something, not just domestic abuse, that can be mental health and other issues as well.